give of what's happening, what are the trends globally, what are the trends in the region. And then I want to spend some time looking at how this industry will develop. What's the future? What's the prognosis? Now, that's very important because, as you'll see in a moment, the industry has relatively low growth. In fact, last year was a little bit disappointing. This year looks as though it's going to be even down on last year. So we definitely need some new solutions. And in fact, it was with that in mind that I changed my job title for the first time in 40 years. I used to be, very boringly, chairman and chief executive. So I thought, well, I need a job title that actually reflects what I do. So I invented the name Creative Solutions Director. And that's because I really think that all of us need to be looking for new solutions and very creative ones. And in fact, after the conference tomorrow, I'm going off to a secret location that not even my PA knows about, where I'm going to start writing my new Paradigms report. I wrote that report first in 2003, then in 2009, and it was, for our standards, a bestseller. And I can't think why I didn't update it for 10 years, but I'm going off to start the process. I have a great team of external writers who are working with me on this, and by next May, we will have an over-the-horizons look at the consumer healthcare market, which we'll be presenting in various formats. But let's start at the very beginning. Let's talk about how the global and the local consumer healthcare industry has evolved in the last year. Oh, and what else happened in the last year? Believe it or not, we turned 40. And my usual joke is I was only 5 years of age when I set the company up. I was an early starter. It is true. I am only 45 years of age. So when you all tell me that I'm looking pretty good, I do take that as a great compliment for you. Thank you very much. One other thing to say before I get into this, that this is the era of Me Too, microaggression, and everybody seems to be very fragile and takes offense. So I now start every presentation with these words. I am going to offend every one of you during the course of this presentation, so I apologize in advance. And I think that's the only way you can survive today, is just to apologize in advance. But seriously, no, I'm not going to offend everybody. I will be saying that the multinationals don't have high growth, but that is certainly not an offense. That is a statement of fact. So let's start at the beginning, and this slide you've all seen before, although the data is updated, but the format looks very much the same. The underlying trend in this industry, globally, in value, is 4.5%. And the volume is 2.7%. And from that, assuming there hasn't been much of a change in pack size, we can see that we have a market that is growing nominally at 2.7%. And with a little bit of price increase, clearly, somewhat behind the global rate of inflation, is producing a total of 4.5%. That's historical for 5 years. In the last year, in 2017, we had less than that, 4.1%. And in this year, we think it will be 4.4%. Now, we will have to work hard to get to 4.4%. Quarter one was 4.1, quarter two was 4.2, and by that I mean 12 months, moving annual total, 12 months. And my statisticians tell me that we are going to make 4.4%. Of course, we still have 2 quarters more to report. I hope it does come in at that level. That compares with all commodities, where the International Monetary Fund tells us that all commodities, everything we buy in every country, is increasing in value at 3.7%. So what I've said a million times before is true. The consumer will always find a little bit of extra change, whether it's a Singaporean dollar, an Indian rupee, a Japanese yen, and that rarest of currencies, the British pound, they will still find a little bit of extra change to support the on-the-go habit. They also find slightly more loose change to look beautiful, but that's another story, not for this conference. Now, that's the statistical background to the industry. Going forward, we think it will be about 4.7%, and to do that, we really have to step up our pace, and I'll talk about pace a little later on. Since I met many of you before in Singapore in October last year at the 4th conference, we've done a lot of work with investors. In our M&A division, we do a lot of work with private equity, venture capital. We've done a lot of M&A work. And I've addressed a number of conferences from JP Morgan. And I've been in private investor meetings with hedge funds. And all of these individuals say, but your industry is finished. You have no future. With generic competition, with price erosion, with the internet going to steal the business from you, you have no future. And that's a firmly held and a sincerely held belief. And it does distort the industry because it was very clear that Reckitt Benckiser, that wanted to buy the Pfizer business, that the stock market said, do not buy. And part of that was because they did not believe there'd be the opportunity to wave the magic wand, as Reckitt Benckiser had done before, with many other acquisitions, and to do fast integration, fast cost reduction. Because these learned people in finance believe that our industry has a very poor prospect. Now, the fact is, our industry has a very good prospect. Everyone in this room believes it. Everybody in the industry at large believes it. And when I get to the second part of this presentation, which is the future, we'll go into some of the new paradigm aspects that will drive the industry. In terms of where the growth is, this is a story that has been true. The numbers might be different every year, but the story is the same story. The emerging markets grow well, although not as well as in the past. Asia is a big part of that growth of the emerging markets, and the traditional markets of Western Europe, North America, Australasia are doing slightly better than historically, but still way behind the curve. So measure against every one of those countries the average growth for the world at 4.5%, and you can see that India coming in at 9%, twice the world. Brazil, despite zero growth in the economy, political uncertainty by locking up former presidents, is still growing at 11%. But that's not the 20% we were seeing in the past. So still the same pattern, although I think there's a blurring of the edges in terms of the softness of the emerging markets getting somewhat stronger and the strength of the emerging markets becoming a little weaker. Now, this to me is a chart that every time I see it, I get shivers down my spine. Because one of the first rules of business is that the big get bigger. And they use scale to buy out the competitors, to achieve lower cost of goods, to buy raw materials more cheaply, to buy advertising more cheaply, to have bigger sales forces. OTC, consumer healthcare, defies gravity. If you look bottom right, the top 15 players in this market had a 30% share in 2017. 5 years ago, they had a 31% share. The top 15 are taking a slightly smaller share of the global market than they did 5 years ago. And the top 6, the famous 6 companies that we see here, their share has increased from 19.5 to 22%. But that is a small growth rate when you think of the mega mergers that we've seen. GSK taking over Novartis Consumer, Bayer taking over MCC, Sanofi taking over Boehringer, Reckitt taking over some brands within Mead Johnson. Most of Mead Johnson isn't in these figures. That's a real worry. And when you look at the big 6, and on this chart you're going to see on the right in red, you're going to see the latest data from mid-year 2018, constant currency, retail selling price for the last 12 months, and you'll see that against a market growing at about 4.5%, most of the multinationals are below that. And there are many reasons for it, and no disrespect, because I think the companies employ the brightest minds. But internal compliance and rules, averseness to risk by corporations, playing in markets which don't have high growth, playing in categories which are the lower growth categories, many, many other factors, means that we see companies, eminent companies, smart companies on this table, which are significantly underperforming the market. If we were to be in the cosmetics industry, if we were to be in any other consumer field and we were presenting this data set, the big would be getting bigger. The big are actually getting smaller in organic terms in this market, and that's a worry. And it's the reason that we always look in this data set at where the growth is to be found. So, same formula that we use every year. We take the top 100 players in our DB6 database, now subscribed to by every one of the top players since Procter & Gamble is acquiring Merck, our one holdout we now have. So every one of the top players is taking our data along with other data sets, of course. And we take that data, top 100 companies, and we show those in descending order of growth. And we have some Chinese companies that have magnificent growth, fantastic growth, 30% a year against a market growing at 7%. So it isn't just that they're slipstreaming with a strong market. They are outperforming the Chinese market by a factor of 4 or 5. We see companies doing great things in individual markets. Roma's in an Argentinian company going into Brazil with a great trade marketing strategy. We're seeing EMS with branded generics in Brazil. We're seeing Santen. We'll talk about Santen. Or we'll talk about eye care briefly in a moment. Santen, one of the two companies that markets its eye care products as preservative-free, getting the support of the healthcare professionals, the ophthalmologists and the opticians, who then send their customers to the pharmacy, buy this brand because it doesn't contain a preservative. And that's giving huge growth. I'll show you another one later. And the two in red, there's Health and Happiness. What a great name for a company. That's the Chinese company that bought Swiss Wellness, which, despite it being called Swiss, as you know, is based in Australia. And then iHealth, our long-term client. For 10 years, we helped them to sell themselves to private equity. We helped their private equity owners to sell to a company that was subsequently taken over by DSM, and now we're working with them on the international stage. And with the cultural brand of probiotics, the second biggest brand internationally in probiotics, getting huge growth, 17% a year with a blue ocean strategy. They spend the same amount of money in advertising every year. They don't worry about the competition. Normally, I don't buy blue ocean strategy, but here it seems to work, and they're making a fantastic EBITDA, which is in the public domain. So there are companies that, by being in the right country category or having the right positioning, can get abnormal growth compared with the 4.5% that we see globally. So there is always a way around, and in a moment I'll show you some growth players from Europe. So what's happening locally? Whistle Stop Tour. We'll talk more about this during the course of the next 2 days. Where is the growth coming by country? Well, China, because it's so big and because it has 6.7% growth, added $5 billion at constant currency factory prices in the last 5 years. And then it tapers down. India gave us $1 billion. Australia, very much driven by VMS 374. You can see it, and so on and so forth. In terms of categories, typically the big categories deliver the biggest cash growth, even though they may have small percentage growths. You will not see probiotics here. Now, if I was showing you the global figures, probiotics will be the third biggest growth category. And maybe that will come up a little later on another slide I'm going to show you. But Asia is behind the trend in terms of probiotics, which is being led by US, by Western Europe, and by LATAM. And in fact, Asia is behind many trends globally and pioneers many trends globally. So there's value in diversity. In terms of the big players, you're all going to get this presentation. We posted on the website. GSK is our regional number one because it's effectively in all markets, followed by Taisho, which is mainly in Japan, but is the number one there, and so on and so forth. In terms of brands, the number one is the Chinese Dong'e Jiao, which is the extract. It's the gel that's made from the donkey skins. I used to say wild donkeys, but I think the company has killed all the wild donkeys. They're having to breed them now, especially for this. So if you're a donkey lover, this is not a brand for you. And then you see the other brands there, and it's a mix of multinational brands and local brands. And in terms of the trends and what's driving the market and where it's going, first of all, and most of this could be said globally, but it is the fact that the old business models will not work anymore. And I've said this so many times, I almost fall asleep saying it. You know, the market which is perceived as pills in bottles, creams in tubes, supported in the pharmacy with primetime TV, that model no longer works. I won't go as far as Adi Siegel, the Reckitt head of consumer healthcare a couple of jobs ago, who stood up at one of my conferences and said, the brand manager is dead, he or she just doesn't realize it. I'm not making a statement that strong, but the business model, the traditional business model, is not working as well as it did. And we must find new ways to reach the consumers. Indeed, we must find new consumers. We must find new channels of distribution, which certainly will include online. And we also definitely and desperately need new marketing strategies. And anyone who would like to discuss new strategies, my colleague Ekaterina Pantaleva, who will be addressing you later today, has a beautiful brochure. Oh, in fact, I see it's in front of you. She has a brochure, so she'll be very happy to talk to you about that. The emerging middle class is important, but you know, when we see these incredibly elegant ladies in a top fashion boutique in a shopping mall, this is not the emerging middle class. This is the elite. And it's great to have their business, but we won't get rich on their business. The emerging middle class is that group of consumers who have a disposable income or a total income of $10 a day per person. And part of that will go to consumer healthcare. And that's in Asia, that could be 500 million, it could be a billion, it depends how you define. Most Asian markets are aging, not all. I mean, Philippines has half the population is under the age of 25. But when you look at Japan, Korea, Australia, many of those markets, we have an aging population. And at this conference a few years ago, our colleagues from Mintage were presenting Japanese data which says that there is, in fact, 3 parts of the market for senior citizens. There's the working, there's the retired but active, and there are people waiting for the next life. Probably they are not going to buy our products. But those first 2 clusters of the working elderly, of which there is an increasing number, and the active elderly, and elderly is a bad word anyway, even somebody of 45 years of age doesn't like to use the word elderly. But you know what I mean. So we have to segment the market more carefully. As we do when we look at the other demographics, men and women and need states and lifestyle states. And we also have to recognize that the regulatory hurdle is very high in Asia-Pacific, is higher here than in many other parts of the world. We've seen some brave switches like Sylvester from Douglas Pharma, the first erectile dysfunction medicine. If we have time, we'll play the video at the end of this presentation. We've seen a lot of switch activity in Sylvester, of course, from New Zealand. We've seen a lot of switch activity from Japan. I'm bound to say that since the switch of Allegra by Sanofi, we haven't seen a truly successful switch. We've seen lots of switches, lots of activity, lots of TV commercials. We haven't seen any real game-changing switches that have produced extra value in the marketplace, which is one of the reasons Japan continues to grow at somewhere between 0 and 1%. There are some attractive adjacent categories. We'll talk a little bit more about those in a while. You see them here. But we have to bear in mind that in these adjacent categories, FMCG companies tend to do better than we do. They know how to talk to the consumer better than we do. Because even though many of us have come from FMCG, I'm ex-Procter, and many of you here will be ex-Procter, Unilever, and J&J is FMCG, the minute we join our OTC and CHC companies, we put on a white coat and we start talking molecules. I've seen it happen. I've done it myself. So that's why when it comes to functional foods, we tend to be outpaced by the FMCG companies. But for all of this, whatever our product category is, whatever our strategy is, we have to do better at point of sale with the pharmacy, which remains the bedrock of the market. Introducing new key account management programs for chains and voluntary co-ops, and pharmacy point of care, obviously, for independents and, in fact, all pharmacies. Mass advertising, increasingly more expensive, increasingly harder to reach our younger audience through TV. We have to look at alternatives. E-commerce, I'll talk about in a moment. Digital marketing, I'd say the jury's out. I thought the brave CMO, the Chief Marketing Officer of Procter, who stood up and said, I don't think that we're doing it right. We're spending billions. I don't think we're doing it right. I think that was a brave statement and a very necessary statement. And we mustn't forget that we can benefit from medical marketing support, but we cannot usually afford medical detailing. So we have to find other ways to reach the healthcare professionals, through key opinion leaders, through the internet, through social media, whatever. And of course, turning HCPs into brand ambassadors. Now, I know a number of you were here at the Zulig meeting earlier this year, and I was doing a keynote presentation. You will have seen this before. So I'm doing this very quickly. This is, of course, our great British athlete, Mohammed Farah. And having won just about every medal that you can win in middle distance running, he's now becoming a marathon runner. And I don't think it will be long before he'll become the world's fastest marathon runner. And he succeeds as an athlete by increasing his pace of running. And pace for us means pharmacy, adjacencies, consumer, and e-commerce. And that's why we should always think pace. And we're not going to talk in the few minutes that are available to us about these in detail. So just a few things to say. One is that innovation has to be the spine, the backbone of pace. And innovation isn't just about products, although, of course, product is part of it. But it's everything right down to the total business model. And this presentation of mine is called Seeking New Business Models. So finding the right segmentation with a consumer. Here we have 3 generations of a famous Indian family. And yet, despite women being 51% of the population and consuming 64% of all consumer healthcare products, we have very few specialist products for them. Where it happens, as in the case of the very fast-acting Eve, in a static market, Eve, by being positioned to women with a very clearly women's trademark, gets 9% growth in a static market. So it can work, it has worked. When we look at a consumer-driven aspect of our market, which is prevention, consumers are in the lead there. And that's why we see these high-growth categories like probiotics very much based on the consumer being there before the manufacturers. This is one of a number of examples of where the consumers arrived first, and we were the fast followers, not the other way around. Now, one of the categories where I think the consumer is telling us in no uncertain terms and in a very loud voice that they want to see more products is this whole area of natural and organics. I'm going to take 5 minutes just to go over a very quick case study. So the first thing to bear in mind is that this is all about offering consumers effective medicine, so therefore the products have to work. Although they're based on natural, sometimes on organic formulations, they have to work, and ideally that should be based on clinical evidence. And indeed, work that's been done by TNS TNS study for GNT found 5 discrete consumer segments. Those are consciously seeking health, the caring parents who want to provide the best for their children, busy health seekers, consumers on the go who just want a good product they can use effectively and safely. And I admitted to say consumers perceive natural as safe. Now, it may not be safe, but that's how they perceive it. It's also for a group of consumers who want value for money. They see these products as value for money. Maybe they think it's cheaper to collect something from the Brazilian rainforest than make a medicine out of a lump of coal or a barrel of oil, I don't know. But that came up as a target market for natural and organic products. And consumers in the convenience sector. They want these products to be free. They want them to be free of artificial flavors, colors, gluten, and they want them to be non-GMO. That's very important. And they will demand that. And in a sense, that goes back to what I was saying about the eye care brands that are growing, the ones that are preservative-free. Consumers see that all part and parcel of taking out the harmful additives that we find in foods and medicines. In fact, the whole industry, not just healthcare, is being driven by this trend. I could not believe when I read that McDonald's has introduced the McVegan burger. Amazing. Good for them. Absolutely in line with a major social trend. Consumers are demanding this, particularly in the US. They're favoring, in terms of their purchases, they like the small independent, but Big Pharma and Big Food is coming into this market. And here are just a few examples. Garden of Life, bought by Atrium, which has in turn been bought by Nestle. New Chapter, bought by Procter & Gamble, still standalone. And Zarbee's, the honey-based cough, cold and flu brand that Johnson & Johnson has just acquired. But very important to remember, consumers believe these products are safe. And here's McVegan. In terms of organic, this goes beyond food. This goes into medicine. Consumers want organic products that are healthy and ethical. Now, this isn't all consumers, but it's a substantial number. If not the majority, it's a significant minority. And in the US, the gold standard is to get the USDA, the US Department of Agriculture, organic stamp, and to be able to put that on your product. And we see consumer healthcare products with the USDA stamp on it. We'll show you some examples. They've got to have no toxins. They've got to be pesticide-free or use GMO ingredients. They're certified. Garden of Life, again from Nestle, which I think is going to be a major player in our market going forward, claims to be the #1 certified USDA brand. Here's from Apex Brands, the Feel Good Organic Superfood Capsule. And too early to say whether it's a success, but in terms of its positioning, it claims to be 100% certified, organic, and that the ingredients are entirely organic and the capsule itself is organic. Now we come to cannabis. I think, along with e-commerce, the most exciting thing that is going to happen in this industry over the next 10 years. And of course, I'm showing this slide because Canada has become the first G7 country to legalize, to decriminalize cannabis for recreational use. The first country was Uruguay. Here's a little film from last week when this was passed through the Canadian Parliament.
Canada has become the second country to legalize recreational marijuana nationwide and the first G7 country to do so. The Cannabis Act passed its last obstacle on Tuesday in a Senate vote 52 to 29. It paves the way for a fully legal cannabis market in Canada within 8 to 12 weeks. It will allow marijuana possession, home brewing, and sales for adults. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's Liberals made the legalization of marijuana a key part of their successful election bid in 2015. After the bill passed, Trudeau tweeted, "It's been too easy for our kids to get marijuana and for criminals to reap the profits. Today, we changed that." Uruguay was the first country to legalize the sale of recreational cannabis in 2013. 9 U.S. states have legalized it for recreational use, and 29 have legalized it for medicinal purposes. However, Canada is the first major economy to do this nationwide. Other nations will be closely watching how Canada handles the rollout. Global investors will keep an eye on it too. Billions have already poured into Canadian marijuana companies with names like Aurora Cannabis and Canopy Growth Corp.
A couple of weeks ago, we had a New Directions conference on innovation and regulatory and new technology and medical devices in London. And we had a producer of cannabis from Israel who presented to us, and he gave us some amazing statistics. The one that stood out in my mind is that by 2020, only 2 years away, 300 million people in the world will live in countries which permit medicated cannabis. This is a market that's happening. Now, the question to this audience is, do you want to be part of it or not? Do we have anyone here from Teva or anyone who's worked from Teva? When I first started working for Teva in 1991 as a consultant, I went into the head of OTC, and on his desk he had a plaque, and it said there are 3 types of manager: the manager who makes something happen, the manager who watches something happen, and the manager who says what happened. When it comes to cannabis, and I don't mean peace man, when it comes to cannabis, medicated cannabis as a huge marketing opportunity, where do you stand? Where does your company stand? Are you going to make it happen, watch it happen, or wonder, how come those guys are making billions out of cannabis and I don't? So take this seriously. We have a study group on it, and it'll be part of my new Over the Horizons book, which will be coming out next year. I'm very happy to talk to anyone who wants to discuss that with us. Here are just a few key facts, and they're not statistical, it's more subjective. Market primarily focused on US and Canada, some in Australia, and parts of Europe. And Uruguay, never forgetting Uruguay. The cannabis extract, beneficial for chronic pain, I think that's well known, for all sorts of muscular conditions, aches and pains, spasticity, whatever that is, mood and anxiety, but many other conditions. But we, of course, we need more scientific assessment. We need more clinical trials to prove efficacy and to prove safety. Having said that, medical cannabis has the addictive feature taken out of it. You'll see that on the next slide. Wide range of product delivery systems, transdermal patches, topical creams, roll-ons, drops, tinctures, you can read it there. We have some leaders in the field in the US, Barleans and Green Gorilla, what a great name for a company, are offering these products already. Some of these are getting around the controversy by claiming to be hemp oil, because hemp oil is a source of another source of cannabis. And we're also seeing some interesting new combinations. For example, one of the leaders in Canada is called Neptune, and they're putting together cannabis or CBD, cannabis oil, together with krill for additional benefits as well as pain. There's some cardiovascular benefits in there as well. So here's Barlean's, a little piece I took from their website, CBD hemp oil. What is it? And it's very interesting. If you look bottom right, their hemp oil, and not just for them, has only 0.3% of the addictive substance, which is called THC, but 20% of CBD, which is the good aspect, which is what gives the benefit, including the pain relief, whereas typically marijuana has 20% of the addictive and only 10% of the beneficial. So of course the product has to be treated in a particular way. And I think companies like Barleans, independent company like Barleans and the others that we saw here, are way ahead of the game. I suspect there'll be a lot of acquisition activity here, that the big players will come into this market by buying these entrepreneurs, taking over their technology, taking over their brands, and investing to the next stage. Personalised medicine will be good, although as a participant at our London conference said, there is no such thing as personalised medicine. We're talking about focused medicine. We will never really be able to have a medicine that is so specific for Joe Soap of Milwaukee that only he gets it. There's no scale there. But targeting groups of individuals with specialised medicine that is more than just the 50 plus, the 70 plus, the men, the women, the children. It's got to be more than that. And there are lots of activities by entrepreneurs, and here are just a few examples, and we just don't have time to go into that because we have lots of things to do in the next 21 minutes and 57 seconds. Let's take a look at e-commerce. Most of this is known. What isn't known, I think, is the size of the market. We still are arguing because this is not an audited sector. But I think that what we can't disagree with is what Jack Ma said recently, which is that e-commerce is not a business model, it's a lifestyle. Now, Jack is standing down from his group of companies. There is a suspicion that he surrendered ownership in part, directly or indirectly, to the Chinese government. But Jack Ma reckons that by 2036, although observing how he does things or his company does things, it will probably be sooner, that there will be 2 billion customers of Alibaba, which is the Eastern version of what we have in the West through Amazon, with Jeff Bezos, the world's richest man. So we have these two big personalities, one of whom is now standing down, but we have Jeff Bezos, we have the people at Alibaba, Daniel Zhang, who I've met once or twice, who's taking over, great people who are going to build e-commerce to a much higher level than where it is at the moment. Now, the advantages of e-commerce are well known. I'm putting them up on the screen, but I don't think there's anything here that we don't know. Simply, we can say that e-commerce works where there's a price advantage, which is typically for premium price products and large multi-buys, or where there's something to do with intimacy, or where there's something to do with advice needed. And we see Alibaba setting up an ability to have live chats with HCPs. So if you want to buy a pediatric product, you can have an online chat with a pediatrician. This is all very new, but will go very fast. There is a downside, and again, pricing. We've tracked on behalf of clients, we've tracked what the price advantage is of e-commerce. It's about 10%, but there's a wide variation. It goes from minus 50, where e-commerce is more expensive than retail, to where it can be 29% cheaper. We've looked at 3 major brands across 6 major e-commerce markets, Centrum, Vicks, Nicorette. We've taken the same SKUs in every case. We've tried to be fair in the comparison, and it came out as an average at 10%. So e-commerce is not yet ripping out the price heart of the market. The downsides are, as you see here, I'd say the biggest in Asia is the ability of counterfeiters to put counterfeit brands on the market. And all those blue pills of Viagra that are sold on the internet, 99% of them are fake. Now, they may work, or they may not work. They may actually kill you, but they are definitely not from a Pfizer factory. In terms of what's the market value, we've put together our heads with other smart heads around the world, and we've come up with a figure of about 11%. Now, I ought to explain that's on a bigger sales base than I was showing a few minutes ago. This is the retail market that I showed you, plus e-commerce, plus multi-level, the Avon, Amway market. Take all of that, e-commerce is today 11%. It's 10.5 billion. By 2025, and I think that's now looking to be a pretty cautious forecast, it will be 19%. So that means that 30.5 billion at factory prices, the equivalent of the United States of America, retail consumption of our products, that will be the e-commerce market. But I think, as I'm saying these words, I know it's going to be a lot more than that. This is the future, just as I think that in products, it's going to be cannabis and a few other products we'll show you in a moment. The issue with e-commerce is going to be who owns it and will governments want to control it. So We know that Amazon are moving into this space with a very good line of supplements and hygiene products, and they want to come into OTC. And it's easy to get. Great contract manufactured product from Perrigo or from other suppliers. We know that governments want to control e-commerce. The China government would definitely want to control the products coming in through e-commerce of Hong Kong which aren't necessarily registered and aren't paying taxes. They will want to control that. They have not taken that move because, to be honest, it's not big enough at the moment, but it will become big enough. And if ever there are instances of people losing their life because they consume a product bought by e-commerce offshore, then I think they will act. So I think those are the dynamics that the big tech companies will end up owning this sector, and the governments will start to control and look for more taxation and more regulation. So it's not an easy journey, but it's going to be a very exciting journey, and it will produce a lot of revenue for many people, maybe not the people in this room, unless we start to become much more proactive. So before we go into the first part of the awards, I just want to say a few things on new product development, which of course is an important part of innovation. So this slide, which we've seen before, it ends up by saying that as well as everything connected with the new business model, of course, at the heart of our business is a brand which has products and should have product development. Product development has been famously unsuccessful in this marketplace. Our new products tracker, our publication new products tracker, which many companies here subscribe to, has tracked 15,000 new products in the last 4 years. We grade those 4-star for truly innovative, 3-star for, yep, there's a lot of interesting stuff in there, 2 and 1, you've wasted your time. Only 7% of these 15,000 were graded as 4-star and 3-star. 93% of the new products launched in the global OTC market, consumer healthcare market, frankly, was a waste of time. And that's been proved in their sales. This chart, which you will get because it will be in the presentation online, will also show where the new products were launched and what categories they were launched in. And here are just a few examples of the grading. Viagra, the new Viagra Connect, 4-star. Marlof from Glenmark, the first OTC malaria prevention product, 4 stars. We gave that a special award in Barcelona. Here's a cannabis gum, got 3 stars. There are many other cannabis gums. This is a very good one, and it has a good story. And here's Mars using cocoa as a medicinal product with Cocovia. Maybe next year I'll be showing you the Coca-Cola product that has cannabis in it, which has been announced. That's going to be very interesting. Very briefly, and Mary's going to start telling me I'm running out of time, but I think we started 5 minutes early, so I think we'll be okay on this, Mary. Europe is generally perceived as a market where we have very little innovation, but in fact, and very few successful new brands. Not true. We have 200 brands of over $27.5 million, of which 14 have 20% annual growth rate. When you look at what's driving the growth, here's a natural cough remedy called Grantos from Italy, growing at 20% a year. Here's another cough remedy called BronchoStop, wet and dry cough in the same product, natural, growing at 47% a year. Here's Talos, an eye care product with no preservative, growing at 49% a year. Here's the fastest growing probiotic in Europe. It's called Omnibiotic from the Allergosan company of Austria, the #1 in Germany, growing at 40% a year. And the granddaddy of them all, which is not me, by the way, it's this brand here, Voltaren, $579 million in Europe, growing at 11% a year, a mature brand that continues to grow because of ethical heritage, engagement with the consumer, great advertising, targeting older consumers, those who want to stay on the go, fantastic NPD, and a great trade marketing policy. Tailwinds. We hear a lot about headwinds, but what about tailwinds? What about what's happening in the market that's favorable? We think that governments will support Switch in the future, although they've been not very helpful in the past. Here are my prospects for the future. These are the categories where I think we'll be spending more time and investment: obesity, diabetes, mental health, sleeping disorders. You read them on the board. Cannabis is in there. Vaping is in there, although I don't know which way that will go. Erectile dysfunction is going to be very, very significant. So I'm going to end.
I want to talk to you about something personal, erection problems. Now, in the past, if you wanted a treatment, you had to go and see your doctor. Well, all that's changed. New Zealand's just become the first place in the world where you don't have to see your doctor. You can now go direct to your pharmacist. Just ask for Sylvester. It works the same as those other little blue pills. Your pharmacist will give you a checkup, and if Sylvester's right for you, you're good to go. Easy, right? Sylvester, the little blue pill, now direct to you from your pharmacist.
Douglas Farmer, New Zealand, 4 or 5 years ago, the first legal erectile dysfunction product over the counter. It's quite a complicated story. It still had actually prescription registration, and in New Zealand you can advertise on TV a prescription medicine, but to the consumer it was an OTC. Now, I always said that when the big companies got into this, I hoped they would actually put a bit of fun into it, and I was agreeably surprised that when Pfizer switched Viagra in the UK with Viagra Connect, I think the TV campaign is pretty good, and here it is.
You've done it all. You've broken every code. And poured the rebel to the floor. Come up and see me, make me smile. I'll do what you want. 4.3 million men in the UK experience erectile problems. Viagra Connect is now available without prescription.
No medical story, all lifestyle. That's going to have the desired effect, I believe, which is to send the men to the pharmacy where they will have to answer a protocol to get the product. I'm so pleased because I thought this was going to be a doctor telling you what you couldn't do rather than what you could do. So I'm very pleased with that. Congratulations to the folks at Pfizer. Then to end, before we do the first part of the awards. You've seen this slide before. Many of you have seen this slide before. The answer to the question is no, we're not looking in the right place for growth. We're looking at the two-thirds which is displaying low growth. We're not looking at e-commerce because we don't have the data. We're not looking at multi-level where we don't have the data. But we know the major players there are growing very fast. So the market is already 50% bigger than the figures I showed you at the beginning. We think that on the current model, even though it's not a great model, the growth rate will increase to 5.5%, and that will give us a telephone number of $300 billion by 2025. With the new paradigm, or as I'm now calling it, over the horizon, we can be much bigger than that. But it does mean taking in these new adjacencies. It does mean finding a way for big OTC, big consumer healthcare, to get into medicated cannabis, to start to take a decision on whether we can manage the vaping opportunity or whether we steer clear of it. Being serious players in e-commerce with brands, not generics. All of that will give us that growth rate. So I showed you Mo Farah. He says increase the pace. We want to increase the pace. Are you ready for that challenge? I think those of you here are, because you're here and you'll be listening to the experts and those who are going to make assessments and judgments and give us advice over the next 2 days. That's all I'm going to say, although I'm here and I'll be doing something up tomorrow and I'm here for the various network sessions and whatever. What we're going to do now is the first of our 3 awards segments, and this is for the New Product of the Year award. Now, we call these in, and we always have a lot of interest. We don't show every product that's submitted, and we do call in a few that weren't nominated but we think are particularly interested. So in the next 15 minutes, we're going to have 2 5-minute presentations and a shorter presentation that I'm doing on behalf of Reckitt Benckiser Australia. And I'll be presenting their Nurofen Fever Smart product, and we'll be showing a TV commercial. After that, Mika Fernandez from Philippines, Sanofi Philippines, will present a mucosolvan case study, and then CP Huang from the Sensodyne team at GSK will also be presenting their strategy for Southeast Asia. They will talk about their products better than I can, but for the first one, unfortunately, you have me. So, Mary, are we going to show that slide, or shall I just read the? Okay, so you're going to see a slide, but you also get me to talk you through it as well. So, Fever Smart Temperature Monitor comes from the Nurofen for Children brand, and it explored the consumer needs and insights that were discovered in Australia. It was clear that many parents found temperature monitoring for their children and babies quite challenging. Therefore, Reckitt Benckiser launched Fever Smart. It's a unique, these are their words, a unique temperature monitoring system that gave parents a new and helpful solution to manage fever. Consumers have become digitally more connected, we know that, and use smart devices in all aspects of life, especially in the healthcare space. The Fever Smart campaign objective was to help parents in a digital age by bringing a true innovation to children's thermometers, one that aligned with growing consumer trends of self-care and the desire for connected technologies that track health. So that's the basis of the two films you're going to see now. One is a minute film on the internet, which explains at some length what's involved, and then the TV commercial, which is a 30-second after that. So can we roll those two films, please?
Introducing Nurofen for Children Fever Smart Temperature Monitor, which allows the continuous and accurate monitoring of a baby or child's temperature direct to your smartphone. Nurofen Fever Smart Temperature Monitor connects to an app and is simple to set up. The baby's details can be entered simply into the app. Then, the Fever Smart Temperature Monitor is applied under the baby's arm so that the sensor is close to the armpit. Always remember to keep the arm down during use. This is important for the reading. The accurate temperature reading will automatically appear, updating once a minute. No need to wake your child, allowing them to sleep undisturbed and get the rest they need. When the baby's temperature becomes high, Fever Smart will send a notification. Always remember to read instructions before medication is given. Medication can be tracked, and reminders of last medication can be set. Additional observations and symptoms can be noted on the app. Remember to always observe your child. All this information can be shown to a healthcare professional if needed. The device and data storage are compliant with required security standards. Nurofen for Children Fever Smart Temperature Monitor. Feel in control as you monitor your child's fever.
And here's the 30-second.
Introduce.
Yep, here's the 30-second. Music by the Bee Gees. That takes me back.
When your child has a fever, you can disrupt their sleep by constantly taking their temperature. With new Fever Smart Temperature Monitor from Nurofen for Children, you can continuously and accurately monitor temperature, receive temperature notifications, and track medicine, so you can feel in control of your child's temperature. New Fever Smart Temperature Monitor from Nurofen for Children.
Now remember, you're going to vote out of the three presentations you see here what you think is the most innovative product. Of course, presentation, advertising is important, but it's the essence of the product that we're really trying to get to here. So for the second entry, Mucosolvan, submitted by Sanofi Philippines, I'm going to ask Mika Fernandez, who I hope is in the audience, to come up and make her 5-minute presentation.
Good morning. My name is Mika Fernandez. I am the brand lead for Mucosolvan in the Philippines, and I'm representing Sanofi Consumer Healthcare. So our entry for the New Product of the Year Awards is for the campaign launch of our Mucosolvan 24-hour capsules. This is actually the first time that the brand has done any form of consumer advertising since it was launched in the market a few years ago. And the results, as you will see later, is quite significant. But before I get into that, I just want to give you a brief background of the cough category in the Philippines. So it's actually a very huge category. It's worth around $100 million US, and it's a category that's dominated by the big pharma giants. Some are probably in the room, with deep pockets to spend on consumer advertising and trade promotions. Mucosolvan, on the other hand, was a smaller player with only 5% market share as of 2017. However, we wanted to change all that, and we aspired to gain a foothold in the cough market. We knew we had the right to win because our Mucosolvan 24-hour capsules was the first and the only brand in the market to communicate the convenience of once-a-day dosage for treatment of cough with phlegm. So we developed a campaign using the claim, one capsule, 24-hour action. And we brought the campaign to life in different touch points, including the brand's first ever TV commercial, our online materials, of course, in point of sale, even our doctor detailers, and we even refreshed our packaging to reflect the same claim. So we launched the campaign in January, and after only 8 months, we've seen some significant results already, like a 70% increase in sales, a 2.4 market share gain, and even an increase in our awareness and usage scores. So probably to tell you more about the launch, we've prepared this short video. So let's go play it. Can the video be played from there?
The cough market in the Philippines is dominated by pharmaceutical giants that are capable of spending millions on TV ads. In the past, Mucosolvan was a small player beneath these giants. But we in Sanofi Consumer Healthcare had an ambition to gain a foothold in the cough market. How does a small brand stand out against the competition? By addressing a relevant consumer need that no other brand in the market can offer. We learned that consumers want to recover quickly from their cough. Especially with their busy lifestyles, consumers need a cough remedy that is convenient to take. Our solution for speedy recovery? Mucosolvan 24-hour capsules. Mucosolvan was the first cough brand in the Philippines to offer once-a-day dosage for cough with phlegm. We communicated this in our first ever TV campaign using the claim, one capsule, 24-hour action.
Cough with phlegm? Taking medicine 3 times a day can be a hassle. Mucosolvan 24 hours. Just 1 capsule a day gives you 24-hour cough fighting action. Mucosolvan 24 hours.
And supported our TV campaign with strong visibility at our primary point of purchase, drugstores. We also improved the design of the Mucosolvan promo pack, making it stand out from the rest. We launched the campaign in January 2018, and after only 8 months, Mucosolvan delivered the following results. 70% increase in sales, 2.4 market share points gained, 8.5% increase in brand awareness, and 2.2% increase in brand usage. Mucosolvan delivered an innovation, stood out from the competition, and delivered business results, all while helping consumers improve the quality of their lives. Mucosolvan. 1 capsule, 24-hour action.
I hope this was subtle enough. Thank you, and I hope you vote for us.
Perform. You obviously brought your own voting panel with you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is CP from our healthcare team of GSK. Today, I'm here to take you through the launch of Sensodyne Rapid Relief. It's the biggest innovation of the brand in 2017 and 18. How do I show the... Okay. So, when I finish this presentation, there is 3 key things that I want you to remember. Okay, and successful innovation need to answer to the consumer need and support with excellent execution and deliver great result. Okay. Sensitivity, teeth sensitivity is a common symptom across all the consumer. 1 in 3 people in the world have this symptom. In this room, 1 in 3 people have teeth sensitivity. Trust me, during the break, take a sip of cold drink, hot drink, and ice cream. Ice cream here is nice. I buy you an ice cream, okay? If you promise me, switch to Sensodyne if you have teeth sensitivity, okay? And only 1 in 3 of the consumer who have sensitivity treated by a special toothpaste. That's open a huge opportunity for the brands to grow. Secondly, fast relief is a common and important consumer need in many categories. However, it's untapped in toothpaste category. Some talk about that, you know, but no one really owns. We understand the target consumer sensitivity is a common symptom, but nobody, you know, they don't bother to treat it because they don't know that there are quick and fast solution to help them. These 3 key reasons urge Sensodyne to answer to the consumer needs, to launch Sensodyne Rapid Relief, to help consumer beat sensitivity fast, with a strong reason to believe clinically proven relief in 60 seconds. The launch was supported with the high impactful 50% of our full year launch, full year investment was behind the brand. Go big or go home, okay? And also go deep. We don't just launch and leave. We support for at least 18 months across 3 countries. We allocate the budget in 3 buckets to engage with consumer, shopper, and expert. We follow them in-house, out of home, at store, and when they come to visit the dentist. We heavily invest on TVC and also accelerate digital across multiple social media platforms like Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Blogger, create the brand awareness through the out-home channel, MRT station branding, bus stop branding, or in Bangkok in the Skytrain station branding. We play in the premium segment, no promotion during the launch time, maximize our distribution and also in-store visibility. In important channel with the expert, 100% detailing to the key expert and also sampling to those experts. We have planned way ahead of time to plan our launch to meet the dental congress in all 3 markets to ensure that we reach the right dentist at the right place with the right message. This allows us to have rapid result, increase market share in all of the market, consumption grow ahead of the category, and also record share for 2 markets, Singapore and Malaysia. Okay, and our next ambition today is to become the winner of the new products of award of Nicholas Home. Okay, you can be the first to launch the product, but to make it a long-term success or to bring it to the consumer is a long journey. Okay, seeing is believing. Now I want you to see the real-life execution of the brand in the next video. My name is CP from Oral Healthcare GSK. Enjoy the video. Thanks.
Beat sensitivity fast with new Sensodyne Rapid Relief. Clinically proven relief in 60 seconds.
So just to reconfirm that you're voting for which you think is the most innovative new product. Just a word on Sensodyne. We normally don't allow, or we don't invite toothpaste manufacturers. This one is so clearly focused on pain, we thought it did come within our adjacent categories. So please vote. And Mary, when do we want the voting slips by? By the lunch break or the coffee break? At the end of the day. So you have the whole day to make up your mind on this difficult decision, the most difficult decision you'll have to face this year. Now I'm going to ask Araxia Topjan to come and talk to us about the journey of vitamins to the patients. Araxia joined us at 2 other conferences and made a really excellent presentation, so we've invited her to come back twice. I have her biography here, so while she's coming to the podium, let me tell you that she's a pharmacist. She's worked for great companies like Sandoz and Novartis. In 2017, she joined DSM as in the global marketing management team focusing on innovation.